Thank you very much. And this is something I get really excited about. I love reading. I love this book. I think you're going to love it if you haven't read it already, because it's not just a book about growing up. It's a book about growing wise, and we should all read it 2 or 3 times every now and then. It's also a book about growing kind, and I hope you'll like it. But I want to talk to you today a little bit about just reading. I was asked not too long ago to write a short essay, and I promise it's short, for the Mississippi Reading Journal on my recollections of reading. And I know at least a couple of you I've already met may relate to this, so if you'll indulge me. Recollections of a Restless Reader by Martha Dunnigan Saunders. I'm reasonably sure that had I not taught myself to read by the age of 5, I would be illiterate today. You see, I was one of those little kids in the 1st grade with a wee bit of trouble sitting still. I did try. I always gave the teacher my rapt attention at first. But as the lesson grew long, I would grow increasingly uncomfortable sitting upright. In an effort to get better positioned, I would wrap first one foot around the leg of the chair and then the other, and a little later I would fling an arm behind my back just to stretch and twist at the waist, and then in a spectacular display of acrobatics, I would somehow manage to propel myself out of the seat and end up sprawled on the floor or in my neighbor's lap. As a result, I was banished to the cloakroom for a portion of almost every day of the 1st grade. So while my colleagues at F.B. Woodley Elementary were following the adventures of Dick and Jane and Puff and Spot in their reading circles, I was making shadow puppets with the light peeking through the cracks in the closet door, or happily imagining my future as a cowgirl, or going through the other kids' lunch boxes in search of those tiny little boxes of raisins so popular in those days. They never missed the few I ate, and sometimes I just took a nap. I tell you this not to bemoan the harsher standards of classroom discipline of the mid-50s, but to acknowledge with deepest gratitude 2 big pieces of luck I had as a kid. First, I was born into a family of readers. I do not remember a favorite toy from childhood, although I assumed I had one, but I do remember my favorite books. We had a collection of little golden books from which Mama read to us every night. I liked nursery rhymes and could almost recite from memory the story of the Little Red Hen. How I delighted in her self-sufficient sassiness. Well, I'll just do it myself, said the Little Red Hen. My favorites were the adventures of Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy. Those 2 really knew how to have a good time. I remember sitting on my mother's lap as she rested in the oversized rocking chair that had belonged to her mother and read the evening paper. There weren't many pictures on the page to entertain me, so I started sounding out the words in the headlines in an effort to comprehend the news of the day. My father was a lover of words and would pore over his old tattered thesaurus as avidly as some read pulp fiction. When he found an unfamiliar word, he would repeat it throughout the day and kind of roll it around on his tongue as if to test its balance and texture. His enhanced vocabulary was not lost on his most attentive little sidekick. I may have been the first kid in my class to use the words ubiquitous and nonchalant in an essay on how I spent my summer. My second lucky break was to live in a town with a great public library. Apart from the few expensive reference books Mother had scrimped and saved to acquire, our home bookcase was sparsely filled. Novels were a luxury for a family on a tight budget, so the books I enjoyed had to be borrowed. At age 8, I declared myself grown up enough to take the city bus to town, get off at the Pine Street bus stop, turn left on Main, and travel a few more blocks to the Hattiesburg City Library. There I spent some of the happiest summer days of my childhood, exploring Roman, then Greek mythology, riding along with Nancy Drew and her powder blue roadster, and falling hopelessly in love with the world described in the stacks of National Geographic magazines. I'm much older now, with the good fortune to own shelves filled with volumes of diverse literature, a long-standing account at Amazon.com, and a Kindle loaded with at least 3 novels ready to read. I can't imagine a world without books. If I could have one wish for every little kid in the world, it would be for all of them to learn the indescribable joy of a life in the company of the printed word, with a few boxes of tasty raisins on the side.